China's reaction to Ukraine could be putting its citizens in danger. A citizen watches the news report on the conflict between Russia and Ukraine at the appliance store in Huangzhou, China. A version of this story appeared in CNN's Meanwhile in China newsletter, a third times a week update exploring what you need to know about the country's rise and how it impacts the world. CNN, Chinese citizens in Ukraine find themselves in a tense situation as plans for the evacuation from the war-torn country set in motion weeks after Western nations argued their citizens to leave have stalled, leaving those who remain worry about potential backlash over China's reaction to the Russian invasion. A plan for charter flight to evacuate the citizens out of Ukraine was put on hold over the weekends as fightings in the country intensified, with China's top envoy in Kiev saying late Saturday that citizens now needed to wait till it's safe to go. There are missiles in the air, explosions, and guns on the ground, and the two armies are fighting each other. How it is possible to ensure safety to live in such circumstances? Ambassador Fan Xianglong said in a video posted to the embassy's social media account on Saturday, 3 days after the embassy released the plans for evacuate flight. Some 6,000 Chinese citizens are in Ukraine, according to China's state media. Unlike nationals from many other countries, they did not receive the instructions to leave the country before the invasion began, as Chinese officials pushed back on warning from the US and its allies that the Russian attack was imminent. But now, some of those who remain or who live permanently in the country have voiced concerns about their safety, and not only due to the intensifying conflict. Beijing, which was fostered increasingly close ties with Moscow, has so far refused to condemn Russia outright or described its actions as invasion. China's state media has also adopted a pro-Russian viewpoint in its domestic coverage, while online posts in support of Ukraine and its president have been censored. Meanwhile, there has been an outpouring of pro-Russian sentiment as well as misogyny against Ukrainian women on China's highly restricted and censored social media, where nationalist voices typically dominate. Such disgusting comments are later picked up by Ukrainian media, furthering suspicions of Chinese community, according to Sun Guang, a Chinese vlogger who has lived in Ukraine for 2 decades and raised his family there with his wife, who is Ukrainian. As soon as they see me as a Chinese face, they think I'm here to sabotage or support Russia, Sun told CNN, noting he was stopped and questioned by several residents when he went to buy groceries earlier that day. I don't think the current situation in Ukraine is safe for Chinese, he said, while calling on people online back in China to show greater empathy. Ukraine is suffering from war and people are dying every day, he added. A young man who described himself as a student in Ukraine also said in a social media post on Saturday that he and his friends are afraid to identify themselves as Chinese. In air raid shelters or subways in Kiev, people query Chinese state students if they agree with those comments online, making many students afraid to stay in the subway, he said. I also want to apologize to Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian women, he said. China's Twitter-like social media platform Weibo did take action, saying on Friday it removed 542 comments from 74 accounts for writing inappropriate remarks. China's embassy has also walked back advice issued Thursday encouraging citizens to display Chinese flags on their cars for protection. On Friday, a statement on safety practice instead told Chinese citizens not to identify yourself or display identifying signs. In his video address on Saturday, Fan, an ambassador, argued Chinese citizens in Ukraine not to get into argument with the locals or fill them out of curiosity. He also struck a personal tone, calling on Chinese citizens to understand Ukrainians' feelings and saying in plain language, "We respect Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity." Experts say that China's decisions around the plans for evacuation and changing recommendations may have been based on misplaced assessment about Russia's agenda or miscalculations about how serious an invasion would be or how quickly it would be over. China pushed back as late as February 18, less than a week before Russian forces moved in from multiple directions on U.S. intelligence that the invasion could be imminent, amid denials from Moscow that it intended to invade. At that point, China may have felt it had the moral duty or obligation to provide political support to Russia and discredit a Western information campaign against Russia, said Li Mingjiang, associate professor and provost chair in international relations at Nanyang Technological University's Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore, who noted that this all played out on the heels of a meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. In that context, it would be very difficult for the Chinese authorities to seriously prepare and do anything for the evacuation of Chinese nationals in Ukraine. Otherwise, China's word and actions wouldn't match, he said, adding Beijing may not have believed the invasion was imminent. In response to the question about whether it has waited too long to urge citizens to leave, China's foreign ministry on Monday said that it had issued relevant safety warnings in a timely manner and that the ministry and embassy in Ukraine were working day and night to safeguard the citizens. As for whether the evacuation would continue, spokesperson Wang Wenbin said China was working out all feasible plans to assist Chinese citizens in Ukraine with the voluntary and safe evacuation, but the current security situation was extremely unstable. Alfred Wu, associate professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, said China's response may be due to an underestimation of the situation, as well as the determination of Western support for Ukraine and the capacity of Ukraine's forces. They mostly thought the war would end in a very, very short period of time, maybe less than 1 week, and Chinese citizens would be protected under Russia's new regime, said Wu. But now there is a realization that the war has two sides, he said.